This video is not intended to encourage or glorify any kind of drug use. The sole purpose of these videos is to educate you on the dangers of what these substances can do to you. Please do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video. I repeat, do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video.
Welcome to the world of Tales from the Trip.
I talked briefly about this in another thread the other day, and it had been a long time since I had thought about it, so I thought it may help someone if I tell this story. This happened to me almost 20 years ago now. 20 years later, it's still vivid in my mind. It was so traumatic. The backstory. In 1998, I moved from smoking pot to doing crystal methamphetamine. I remember the first few times. I felt like God. I felt like I had discovered some secret, that the rest of humanity were weaker beings needing to sleep. I was full of life, full of confidence and social. When I ended the nights out and went home, I'd lie there so wired I couldn't even blink. In my head running over fantasy scenarios and dreaming whilst awake. Dawn would come and I'd drift off to sleep. I had dropped out of work and was living off benefits which I used completely to buy crystal. It felt so good. This carried on for a while. I got confident, got a girlfriend. I hadn't had one for a few years. Anyway, my confidence spiraled into egotistical wankerdom. I believed the grains of white crystal I held in my pocket were magic. Then one night, this illusion swung violently into a nightmare. That night, I hadn't slept or eaten anything proper in days. I was wired to fuck already. I met my girlfriend, who in reality was a drugged-up skank from a rough family, and we went to this shitty local pub she liked. I went into the toilets thinking, this place is shit, I'll liven it up a bit. I took out my baggie and proceeded to bomb double what I usually took. It seemed to hit almost instantly. I was in the cubicle, and the rush was pure terror and anxiety. I sat there and heard a few guys come into the toilet. They were talking about me. They were plotting to beat me up. I sat there with my heart pounding and eyes bulging, thinking, what will I do? What will I do? I go out cautiously, and there's nobody there. I go into the pub area, and my mates are playing pool and drinking. I try to pretend I'm okay, but it must have been so obvious I wasn't. As one of my friends commented, you need to calm down on that stuff. My girlfriend said, let's get out of here, you look crazy. So we went to her house, which was just over the road. She said, I'll make you a brew to help you calm down. I sat there and my mind was racing. She was in on it. I never drink brews. She was trying to poison me, or slip me some downers so the people in the pub could beat me up. I sat in the lounge on my own, and looking around, I saw some tools her dad had out. He was installing laminate floor. There was a hammer and a few other bits. Then I saw it, a retractable Stanley knife. I picked it up quietly and slipped it into my pocket, not even thinking what the fuck I was going to do. I just knew if these fuckers came, I was going to defend myself. My girlfriend came in and gave me the brew. I put it down and obviously didn't drink that poison shit. The curtains were drawn, but I saw the shadows outside of a group of people. They were coming. I needed to get the fuck out of there. My girlfriend starts coming on to me. I pretended I was into it. Then, seizing the element of surprise, I push her off, jump up, and shoot out of her house. I sprinted the fastest I have ever ran. Her house overlooked some fields at the back that led onto the woods. I just ran and ran and ran. Once I was a good distance away, I looked back and they were coming. I saw them coming, fast, so I turned and carried on sprinting. On that night, I think I'd have given Usain Bolt a run for his money. I reached the woods and literally felt sick at the thought of going in. It must have been about midnight now, and it was pitch black. There was no place else to go. I hurdled the fence and ran in. I found a densely overgrown spot and hid behind a tree, my heart pounding in my chest. My hand in my pocket slid out the blade of the knife. I stayed quiet for what seemed like hours. I saw them, their dark silhouettes and hooded heads. They looked big, like bodybuilder types, and there were loads of them. I heard them whistle to each other in some sort of code. Then, the worst thing ever happened. The clouds cleared and the full moon shone bright light down, illuminating the woods and revealing where I was. I saw them moving between trees. They were playing a game. They were hunting me. "Just get it over with. What have I done to you? Why are you doing this?" I screamed into the dark. But still, they didn't come. They just sort of circled around me in the woods. My mind raced to every person I might have pissed off, to think who could be behind this. I knew whoever it was, to have this many people out here in the woods, they were serious. "Come on, come and do it then. I've got a fucking knife," I literally screamed into the dark woods. It was probably now about 2 a.m. The shadows just kept darting between trees, only now they looked small. Not even my height, I'm not very tall. The moon had gone back behind the clouds, but then, all of a sudden, a bright white beam came down from the moon to the middle of the woods. My mind then, and I remember with clarity, thought, I cannot believe this is an alien conspiracy. Oh my god, I'm going to be abducted. I'll disappear and no one will ever know what happened. It sounds ludicrous in hindsight, but the terror I felt in that moment. I pulled out the knife. I thought, no, I'd rather fucking kill myself than be taken by aliens. The time now must have been about 4 a.m. because it literally started to grow lighter. I looked around in horror, the blade of the Stanley knife to my wrist. It was like my whole soul screamed no. The light came fast. I looked around. There was no one, no beings, no people, just me. I was freezing. My eyes were literally bulging out of my skull. A moment of clarity came smashing through all the horror. I collapsed to my knees and looked at myself. I was covered in mud. I'd actually cut into my arm and blood ran down my hand. I was filthy. I sat there with my head in my hands crying for ages. What had my life become? I pulled myself up and walked home. All the way, paranoid thoughts rushed through my head. People in cars stared at me. Men in white vans were going to pull up and bundle me into them. The reality was, it was about 5 a.m. There were hardly any cars about. The bad trip lingered. I had to force myself not to look at the shadow people. I remember one vividly leaning on the bonnet of a car, cradling a baseball bat. I forced myself to look down and just get home. Now, the reality that it was a bad trip was a thought I could understand. I felt distraught. I got home, got into bed, and slept for 2 full days. I got up after that 48 hours, and I made a serious attempt to kill myself. My mom found me unconscious. I was in hospital for 3 days. I woke up, discharged myself, and you know what? I went and scored some more meth. Please, if you are young or any age, don't do that shit. It is evil. It is the worst, most horrible thing. It will make you do terrible things to people you love. It will make you do terrible things to yourself. It's just not worth it. I want to add something to the story that I missed. I had a best friend from back then. He too went through a lot of what I did. We were best friends, but the meth eroded that as we each began shutting down. I saw him a few months ago, the first time in about 15 years. It was all good. When I commented on how crazy it was back then, he was walking off in his own direction and turned and said exactly the truth. It always stays with you, and it does.